It's just fairness, sweetheart. My mother's voice dripped with fake kindness as she said those words. I stood in the lawyer's office, staring at the stack of papers my father had just slammed on the desk in front of me. A family reallocation agreement, they called it. The room felt airless. The lawyer looked away, uncomfortable. "Sign it," my father said. His voice was sharp, commanding, the same voice he used when closing business deals. I looked down at the document. They wanted me to redistribute my inheritance, the money my grandfather had left me. Split it evenly among the family. Give up control of the company. "No," I said quietly. My father's face turned red. "You're destroying your own bloodline for money," he shouted. His hand hit the desk, making the papers jump. "Please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Evan Rourke, and this is how I learned that family loyalty can be a weapon used against you." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not because they asked, but because of how they asked, with threats disguised as love. 1 week earlier, everything had been different. I sat in the same lawyer's office, but the atmosphere was calm then. Professional. My grandfather had passed away 2 weeks before, and his will was being read. The lawyer opened the envelope and began reading. Assets, properties, investments. Then came the part that changed everything. To my grandson, Evan Rourke, I leave the entirety of my estate. $7 million in total assets and controlling interest in Rourke Industries. The room went silent. My parents sat beside me, their smiles frozen in place. Then the smiles vanished completely. My father leaned forward. "There must be a mistake." The lawyer looked at him directly. "There is no mistake. These were your father's explicit wishes, witnessed and notarized." My mother's hand gripped the armrest of her chair. Her knuckles turned white. That was when I saw the first crack in their masks. The will reading did not create the betrayal. It revealed something that had been waiting underneath all along. The night before the will reading, my parents had thrown me a family dinner. They said it was to celebrate my birthday, which had passed 3 weeks earlier. Late but thoughtful, I thought. They toasted to family loyalty, to carry the Rourke name with honor. My father gave a speech about how proud grandfather would have been of me, of all of us. Now, sitting in that lawyer's office, watching their faces twist with anger, I understood. They already knew what was in the will. Grandfather's lawyer must have informed them as executors. The dinner was not a celebration. It was a setup. Every kind word that night had been bait, preparing me to feel guilty when they made their demands. My sister, Claire, had been there too. She hugged me and whispered, "We're so lucky to have each other." I remembered feeling grateful for my family. Now I feel sick. They had known, all of them, and they smiled and toasted and lied. After the will reading, everything changed overnight. My parents stopped answering my calls. My texts went unread. Claire blocked me on every platform without explanation. The next morning, I drove to the family home, the house where I grew up, where I still had a key. I needed to talk to them, to understand what was happening. When I tried my key, it did not work. The locks had been changed. I knocked. No answer. I could see my mother's car in the driveway. She was home. She was ignoring me. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We need time to process your betrayal." My betrayal. I stood on the front porch of my childhood home, locked out, accused of something I had not done. I had not asked for the inheritance. I had not manipulated grandfather. I had simply been his grandson, spent time with him, listened to his stories. But to them, that was betrayal. Loving him was stealing from them. 2 days later, my father showed up at my apartment. He knocked politely, smiled when I opened the door, asked if we could talk like adults. His tone was reasonable, friendly even. I wanted to believe things could be fixed. We sat in my small living room. He talked about family unity, about grandfather's intentions being misunderstood, about how we could work together to honor his legacy properly. "All you need to do," he said calmly, "is reassign the controlling interest. Keep the money if you want, but give the family equal say in the company." "Dad, grandfather wanted." "Your grandfather was old and sick," he interrupted. He did not understand what he was doing. The lawyer said he was completely sound. My father's expression changed. The friendly mask slipped. He leaned forward and gripped my arm hard enough to hurt. "You don't know who you're dealing with, boy," he whispered. His eyes were cold, threatening. Then he let go, stood up, and walked out without another word. Within a week, the rumors started. Someone sent anonymous emails to my workplace claiming I had forged grandfather's will, that I had manipulated a dying old man for money. The emails included fake documents, altered photos, and convincing lies. HR called me into a meeting. They did not accuse me directly, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? "These allegations are serious," my manager said. "We need to investigate." "They're lies," I said. "My family is trying to discredit me because of an inheritance dispute." But I could see they did not fully believe me. Doubt had been planted. That was all my parents needed. The shame burned in my chest, not because I had done anything wrong, but because I could not stop people from believing I had. My parents knew exactly how to weaponize reputation. The helpless anger twisted inside me, making it hard to breathe. My fiancée, Naomi, confronted me 3 days later. We were supposed to have dinner, but she sat across from me with her arms crossed, her expression guarded. "Did you hide something from me?" she asked. "What are you talking about?" "I've been getting messages from an anonymous source. They're saying you tricked your grandfather, that you isolated him from the family and convinced him to change his will." My stomach dropped. "Naomi, that's not true. My parents are lying because—" "How do I know?" she interrupted. "How do I know what's real? $7 million is a lot of money, Evan. People do terrible things for that kind of money." I stared at her. The woman I loved, the woman I planned to marry, was looking at me like I might be a stranger, a criminal. My parents' poison was spreading faster than I could contain it. They were not just attacking my reputation. They were destroying my relationships, isolating me, making sure I had nowhere to turn. The cruelty was breathtaking. The next day, grandfather's lawyer called me. His name was Peter, and he had known my family for 30 years. "Meet me at the parking lot behind the courthouse," he said quietly. 30 minutes. Come alone. When I arrived, he was waiting at his car. I got in the passenger seat. He looked nervous, checking his mirrors constantly. "Your grandfather expected this," he said. He handed me a manila folder. "He knew your parents would try to take what he left you." Inside the folder was a handwritten letter from grandfather and a legal document titled Justice Clause Provision. "What is this?" I asked. "Protection," Peter said. "But you need to be smart about it. Don't trigger it too early. Let them make their moves first. Document everything." "What does it do?" He smiled grimly. "It's a trap for anyone who tries to steal from you. But read the letter first. Your grandfather explains it better than I can." He drove away before I could ask more questions. 2 nights later, I walked out to my car and froze. Every window was smashed. The tires were slashed. Someone had keyed deep scratches into the paint along both sides. And on the windshield, held down by a rock, was a note written in block letters. "Family doesn't steal from family." My hand shook as I called the police. They came, took photos, filed a report. But when I mentioned my family might be involved, the officer's expression changed. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Rourke," he said. "Do you have proof?" "No, but then we'll investigate and see what we find." 3 days later, the police report vanished from the system. I called the station. They claimed no record existed of my call or the vandalism report. My father's influence still ran deep in this town. His connections, his money, his reputation. They all worked to erase evidence, to make me look paranoid and unstable. I started digging into Rourke Industries' financial records. As the new controlling owner, I had access to everything, including files my father thought were hidden. What I found made my blood run cold. Consulting fees, hundreds of them, stretching back over 15 years. Millions of dollars paid to shell companies, with vague names. When I traced the accounts, they all led back to one place, my father's private holdings. He had been embezzling from the company for years. from grandfather's company, stealing from the man who built it, the man who trusted him. The inheritance was not about fairness or family unity. It was about covering up theft. With me as the controlling owner, I could audit everything, expose everything. No wonder they wanted me to sign over control. No wonder they were desperate. The will was not just about money. It was grandfather's way of protecting his legacy from the son who had been betraying him for years. That evening, Naomi showed up at my apartment unannounced. Her eyes were red from crying. "I need to tell you something," she said. She sat down heavily, looking ashamed. "Your parents contacted me 3 days ago." My chest tightened. "What did they say?" "They offered me $50,000 to leave you. They said you were unstable, dangerous. They said if I really loved you, I would walk away before you hurt me." She started crying. I almost believed them, Evan. I almost took the money, not because I wanted it, but because they were so convincing. They made me doubt everything. I held her while she sobbed. Part of me wanted to be angry, but I understood. My parents were experts at manipulation. They knew exactly what to say, how to twist reality. If they could buy love, I said quietly, they'd think they could buy morality too. Naomi pulled back and looked at me. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not signing anything." My family held a memorial service for grandfather at the church where he had been a member for 40 years. Family only, the invitation said. I was not invited. I went anyway. I stood at the back of the church, far from the other mourners. My mother saw me first. Her face twisted with rage. She walked down the aisle toward me, her heels clicking loudly in the silent church. "You don't belong here," she hissed when she reached me. "Leave. I love him too," I said. "You loved his money. Now get out before I call security." But before she could do anything, the priest began the service. He read from grandfather's prepared notes, messages he had written before his death to be shared at his memorial. Most were standard. Thank you messages, Bible verses, memories. But at the end, the priest read one final paragraph. "To Evan, who stood alone with truth when others chose comfort, you will always have my respect." The words echoed through the church. Everyone heard them. My mother's face went pale. After the memorial, the attacks escalated. A fake tax audit appeared in my mail, claiming I owed thousands in back taxes. Anonymous complaints were filed with the local business bureau about companies I had never owned. My landlord called to say my rent was being reviewed and might triple next month. Every part of my life was under assault. My parents were using their network, their lawyers, their business connections, their social influence, to destroy me piece by piece. But I had learned something from grandfather's letter. He wrote, "When they attack, document everything. The truth is patient. It waits for the right moment." So I documented. I saved every threatening email, every fake complaint, every suspicious phone call. I took photos, made copies, backed everything up. I was building a case without even knowing yet what I would do with it. But I knew one thing: I would not break. Not for them. I returned to grandfather's study one afternoon. The house was mine now legally, though my parents still had keys and took things whenever they wanted. I searched the room carefully, looking for anything they might have missed. Behind a false panel in the bookshelf, I found a locked metal box. The key was taped to the back of grandfather's favorite photo, a picture of him and me fishing when I was 12. My parents would never have looked there. They would not have remembered that photo mattered. Inside the box were handwritten ledgers, page after page of dates, amounts, account numbers. 15 years of detailed records showing every illegal withdrawal my father had made from the company. At the bottom was a sealed envelope with my name on it. The label read, "For when they come for you." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single page explaining the Justice Clause and exactly how to activate it. "They will come," grandfather had written, "and when they do, this will end it." The Justice Clause was simple but devastating. According to the provision grandfather had written into his will, any descendant who contested the inheritance or demanded redistribution would forfeit all future trust income and assets permanently. But it went further. The executor, Peter the lawyer, was instructed to disclose all corporate, and legal violations committed by that person to the appropriate authorities. It was a trap, a carefully constructed legal snare designed to catch anyone who tried to steal from me. All I had to do was trigger it by filing a formal complaint about their harassment and demands. Once activated, the clause would strip my parents of everything, not just the inheritance they never received, but the trust funds grandfather had established for them years ago, and it would expose my father's embezzlement. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Grandfather had seen this coming. He had built a weapon and left it in my hands, but Peter's warning echoed in my mind. Don't trigger it too early. I needed to wait for the right moment. My mother visited me the next day. She came alone, without my father. Her eyes were red, her makeup smeared. She looked genuinely distressed. "Evan, please," she said. "We made mistakes. Your father and we handled this wrong. Let's fix this. Let's be a family again." For a moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that maybe love could win, that maybe we could repair what had been broken. Then she sat down and said, "If you just sign over half of the controlling interest, your father's partners will back off. We can all move forward." I stared at her. His partners. She realized her mistake immediately. Her face flushed. "What partners, Mom? What are you really afraid of?" She stood up quickly. "Just think about it. That's all I'm asking. Think about what's best for the family." She left before I could press further. But I understand now. My father's embezzlement was not just about greed. He owed money to someone. Dangerous people, probably. And he needed control of the company to hide what he had done. This was not about family. It was about survival, his survival. I made a decision. I would give them one chance to see the reason. If they refused, I would act. I contacted a journalist named Marcus Hayes, who worked for the local business paper. Under an anonymous alias, I sent him a single piece of evidence, the incorporation documents for one of my father's shell companies. I did not explain what it meant. I just planted the seed. 3 days later, Marcus published an article titled "Local Business Leader Linked to Questionable Corporate Structure." It was not accusatory. It was careful, factual, raising questions rather than making claims. But it was enough to start the conversation. The story exploded. Other journalists picked it up. Social media lit up with speculation. My father's name was suddenly attached to the word fraud in headlines across the region. I watched it unfold from my apartment, my heart pounding. I had not destroyed him. I had simply let the truth start speaking for itself. And the truth had a voice louder than any lie. My parents responded with a press conference. They stood in front of cameras, my mother crying, my father's voice breaking with emotion. They called me a troubled son with mental health issues. They claimed I was angry about not inheriting more, that I was fabricating evidence to destroy them. "We love our son," my father said, his voice quivering. "But sometimes love means protecting others from someone who's lost their way." I watched from home, my hands clenched into fists. Their performance was flawless, sympathetic, believable. For a moment, I wondered if I had made a mistake, if maybe the world would believe them instead of me. But then I remembered grandfather's words in his letter. The truth does not need to be loud. It just needs to be patient. I had planted the seed. Now I had to trust that the truth would grow strong enough to break through their lies. The company's board of directors demanded answers. They launched an internal audit, bringing in outside investigators to examine the financial records. Within 2 weeks, the auditors found everything. The shell companies, the fake consulting fees, the millions of dollars missing from company accounts. The evidence was undeniable. My father's longtime business partner, a man named Victor who had worked with him for 20 years, was brought in for questioning. Faced with potential criminal charges himself, Victor cooperated with authorities. He testified that my father had been embezzling for years and that he had been forced to help hide it. For once, I did not have to do anything. The truth was working for me. The machine my father had built to protect himself was collapsing under its own weight. Justice was happening, and I was simply watching it unfold. Reporters surrounded my apartment building. They wanted my side of the story. I stayed inside, refusing to comment. But Naomi stepped outside and spoke to one of them. I watched from my window as she stood confidently, her voice clear and steady. Evan never wanted revenge, she told the reporter. He just wanted them to stop lying. He loved his grandfather and honored his wishes. That's all he did. The clip went viral. Social media turned on my parents. Public opinion shifted as people saw through their tears and accusations. Sympathy swung to me, the grandson who had been attacked for accepting a gift freely given. I was not the villain they had painted me as. I was the victim who refused to stay silent, and people respected that. My father was removed as CEO of Work Industries by unanimous board vote. His reputation in the business community was destroyed. No one would work with him. My mother lost her social media sponsorships. She had built a small following as an elegant lifestyle influencer. Brands dropped her immediately when the scandal broke. Their friends vanished overnight. The people who had attended their parties, who had smiled and networked and promised loyalty, they all disappeared the moment association became a liability. The empire they had built on image, connections, and intimidation crumbled in less than a month. I watched it happen with mixed feelings. Not satisfaction exactly, more like exhausted relief. This war I had never wanted was finally ending, but the cost had been enormous for everyone involved. They showed up at my apartment one last time. My father looked disheveled. His suit was wrinkled. He had not shaved. My mother stood beside him, silent, her eyes empty. "You think this makes you better than us?" my father asked quietly. There was no anger in his voice anymore, just defeat. "No," I said. "It just makes me free." We stood in my doorway for a long moment. Part of me wanted to say something more, to offer forgiveness, or closure, or explanation. But there was nothing left to say. They had made their choices. I had made mine. I closed the door gently. No shouting. No final confrontation. Just the quiet click of a door shutting on a relationship that could not be repaired. I leaned against the wall and breathed deeply. It was over. Peter, the lawyer, called me the next day. "The justice clause has officially been activated," he said. "Your parents' public challenge to the will and their documented harassment triggered the provision." What happens now? Their remaining assets, the trust funds your grandfather established, the shares they still held in subsidiary companies, the properties he had left them in smaller provisions, all of it is legally stripped. You inherit full control of the entire estate. I sat in silence, processing. My parents were left with nothing. No inheritance. No company. No protection. "There's one more thing," Peter said. "The provision requires me to forward the evidence of your father's embezzlement to the district attorney. I filed that report this morning. Criminal charges would follow. My father would likely face prison time." I felt no joy, only a strange, quiet sense of completion. This was not revenge. This was the consequence, the natural result of years of theft and lies finally catching up. I did not celebrate. Instead, I focused on rebuilding what my father had damaged. I used part of the inheritance to restructure Work Industries. I brought in new leadership, established transparent accounting practices, and shifted the company toward employee ownership. I created a foundation called the Honest Hands Project, named after grandfather's favorite saying. Clean hands build honest homes. The foundation provided business grants to young entrepreneurs from working-class backgrounds, people who reminded me of grandfather when he was young. I wanted to honor his legacy not by hoarding what he left me, but by using it to create something good, something that would have made him proud. Naomi helped me design the programs. We worked together late into the night, planning how to turn wealth into opportunity for others. It felt right. It felt like purpose. Months later, I visited grandfather's grave. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful. I knelt beside the headstone and placed a document on the grass. The final annual report for Work Industries. Fully audited, completely transparent, showing steady growth and employee satisfaction. "I did it," I said quietly. "I protected what you built, and I made it better." The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere nearby, birds sang. My mother had written me a letter the week before. Just one line. "We never thought we'd lose you this way." I never replied. There was nothing to say. They had not lost me. They had pushed me away when I refused to betray the person who had loved me unconditionally. I stood up, brushed grass from my knees, and walked back to my car. Naomi was waiting, leaning against the passenger door, smiling at me. Justice does not always shout, I thought. Sometimes it just outlasts the lies. And sometimes that's enough.